Well, hey, folks, the battle in Austin, Texas has now begun, and the prosecution appears to be ready for a knockdown dragout. I mean, sparks already are flying in the opening statements, but that's all we're going to get to see on this particular case because the judge isn't allowing cameras in the courtroom. Now, we'll catch the opening statements and talk a little bit about this case. It's the case of Kaitlin Armstrong, the biker in the Lovers Triangle murder case. Hey, well, welcome to Profiling Evil in this edition. I think you're going to really enjoy getting caught up to date on this one because it's gone kind of quiet, but it's going to trial starting today, and you're not going to want to miss this one. I hope you'll take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button, and ring the bell so that you're getting all of our notifications on videos just like this one. And thanks so much for your support of Profiling Evil. Now, Judge Brenda Kennedy is presiding over the Armstrong trial. She's made it really clear that cameras are not going to be allowed in the courtroom. And she made an exception only for the opening statements, prosecution and defense. Now, the question will be whether we'll see the closing statements and the verdict when this case is over. Reporters are still going to be able to get into the courtroom and watch this trial unfold. So we're all going to have to rely upon their perceptions of what happened in the case as it goes day by day. And I hope you'll watch for me on Court TV and News Nation as we talk about this case a little more in detail. In fact, in a few minutes, I'm going to be joining Anna Garcia on True Crime Daily to talk about this case. Now, this decision, in the judge's opinion, is all about minimizing the chance of a mistrial being declared. There is concern boiling around whether the jurors, even though they promise not to, might catch media accounts or listen to YouTube channels and everything else and find out about things that they're not supposed to know about in the case. You know, there's a reason why they exclude them from being able to watch those things when they give jury instructions. And it's because every once in a while, something's allowed into court, maybe in a session without the jury present, to talk through issues. And then, of course, on shows like this one or on mainstream media accounts, there's all kinds of information covered about the case that may never make it to a juror. Now, they might also be concerned that knowing that there's going to be live TV, witnesses who aren't used to being on camera could be even more intimidated by the court system. So that's going to be pretty interesting to see how this thing shakes out. Now, the thing I found so interesting this morning when I watched the opening statements was first that the audio was really crummy. I don't know why they didn't do something to make it possible for all of us to hear without question what the prosecution and the defense is saying. I tried to clean up the audio, and if you watch my version compared to others, none of the content is different. I just tried to get rid of some of the background noise and boost the voices a little bit. You can watch the entire opening and closing, or the opening statements from both the prosecution and the defense at the end of this video. And it's not too long, so I would really encourage it because those are the cliff notes for what really happened in this case. But let's just kind of retrace the case quickly so that you can remember what's happening in this. We're talking about Austin, Texas. It was May 11th in 2022, so just over a year ago, the police responded to a call to a local home where they found an unconscious woman who had a gunshot wound to the chest. Now, we're going to learn in the opening statements that there were more gunshot wounds on this victim, and we're going to hear about some horrific audio that was recorded of the victim dying. I'm glad that we're not going to hear that audio, but we're going to hear talk and testimony that's going to be presented in this trial. The woman at the time was unidentified, and she died at the scene. Now, they soon figured out that it was a biker, a professional biker named Mo Wilson. Mo's her nickname. And as they looked at this thing, they started finding some connections between Colin Strickland, a man who knew Mo Wilson and had been with her earlier in the day, and Kaitlin Armstrong, who also was involved in them. By May 12th, police are questioning Kaitlin Armstrong about this case. And this is really significant because this is the following day. There's a couple of interesting things that happen. Number one, Armstrong's vehicle is seen outside of the victim's home before the murder occurs, seen driving by. That's really significant. Now, there's also evidence that's collected at the home that Armstrong and Strickland are living in, a weapon that's later forensically tied back to the crime scene and this victim in this case. And we know, after learning more about the case, that Armstrong was living with Colin Strickland in this home. They had kind of a tumultuous relationship and at one point had broken up many months before. It was during that breakup that Colin Strickland connected with Mo Wilson, and for a brief time they had an affair. Well, all of a sudden, we're learning that Mo Wilson was back in town for a bike race that was going on, and she and Colin Strickland hooked up. They went swimming together. They were seen at a local swimming pool, and they went to dinner together. When Strickland returned home to Armstrong, who it sounds like was probably surveilling his activities, he lied about where he'd been, and that is what police are saying was motive for Armstrong to go out and kill Mo Wilson. Now, why these killers end up going for the competition rather than the boyfriend who was cheating on him is something that I'd really like to see your comments down below. I don't understand why that happens that way. But on May 12th, the day following the homicide, Kaitlin Armstrong is questioned by Austin police. They have a warrant for her arrest, but the warrant has some issues with it, and so they decide they're not going to arrest her, and they release her. This, again, is significant because it's going to play in to the defense and their position on why Armstrong left town. Now, that was May 12th. Murder on May 11th, questioned Armstrong on May 12th. On May 13th, Kaitlin Armstrong sells her vehicle, that black Jeep that was seen driving by Mo Wilson's house just before the murders occurred. She sells her car to a CarMax dealer and gets $12,200. And she takes that cash, doesn't put it in her bank account, just hangs on to the money. Now, the following day, May 14th, Mo Wilson is identified. And this is really important because that questioning that occurred 2 days earlier was because Kaitlin Armstrong's vehicle, that black Jeep that she sold, was in front of Mo Wilson's house just before the murders occurred. Now, police identify her as Anna Moriah. She goes by the nickname Mo Wilson, a professional cyclist who happened to be in Texas at the time for a local race that was going on. On that same day, May 14th, when Mo Wilson is identified, Armstrong, after selling her Jeep, packs up her bags and she flies on an airplane from Austin, Texas to Houston, Texas. Now in Houston, Texas, she then catches another flight that takes her up to Newark Airport up in New Jersey, next to New York City. Now this is really interesting because it's here where we later learn that she ends up driving further north up to meet her sister who's working at a big kind of off-grid camp in the area. I don't think it's off-grid. It was actually had electricity and everything else, but it's a big camp area. She spends a short amount of time with her sister, then returns back to Newark Airport, flies over to New York's LaGuardia Airport, and using phony identification for her sister's passport, she boards a plane and flies to Costa Rica. Now, 3 days after she flies to Costa Rica, police are unaware of where she's gone. Police are unaware that she's used her sister's passport. Police, frankly, are unaware that she even drove up to her sister to talk with her. On May 17th, an arrest warrant is issued. And according to the arrest affidavit, that's where they point out that Wilson and Strickland had been swimming together and dinner together leading up to the motivation for this crime. She felt like he was cheating on her. By May 20th, The search for Kaitlin Armstrong begins, and the U.S. Marshals get involved, and they start looking. And for 40 days, Kaitlin Armstrong is on the lam. What we learn is Kaitlin Armstrong had flown to Costa Rica and under a fake name was sitting out on the western coast of Costa Rica, acting as a massage therapist and a yoga instructor, and during that time was spending some of that $12,000, $6,000 of which was used for plastic surgery. She dyed her hair black and had started to change her appearance. Now her family is out on public content saying that she's innocent. It doesn't surprise me. By June 23rd, police locate Armstrong's vehicle that has been sold. Again, that was sold the day after the murders. By June 30th, though, this 43-day manhunt comes to an end as Kaitlin Armstrong is arrested in Costa Rica, in Santa Teresa beach town, and there she is extradited back to the United States. When she returns to the United States, she goes before a judge on July 20th, and she pleads not guilty. And then the court process starts. And shortly after that, sometime in August, police get a search warrant for all of Armstrong's belongings. And there they start to find things like her sister's passport that she used to get from Newark to New York to New Jersey, to Costa Rica. They find medical cards and paperwork supporting that $6,000 plastic surgery, and that was for a medical center in Costa Rica. They end up getting into a pretrial hearing. They get set, and a court date is set for this week. But then things go kind of quiet, except for in Kaitlin Armstrong's case. She is working out like crazy in the jail cell where she's working. In fact, feverishly working out. And they make note of the fact that she's working out. And then she claims that she has an injury and she needs to see a doctor. Somehow, Armstrong convinces the jail staff that she shouldn't have her legs shackled because of this leg injury. And while she's at the doctor's appointment, she attempts an escape. And she goes on a 10-minute run. She's on the lam for 10 minutes where she runs from the building and eventually is captured. A police officer, a jailer, is hurt during this chase, and you can kind of see that on this little video here. And then she has an additional number of felonies added to the charge of murder. She's charged with a second-degree felony for escape causing bodily injury, and that was that officer that fell down. Pause for a second with Christmas rolling in and the holiday season and tell you a little bit about Profiling Evil books. Now, many of you have purchased my books through our website, profilingevil.com, or on Amazon. Well, I recently released a newly updated book called Predators: Who They Are and How to Stop Them. It's a book I wrote alongside my friend and mentor, FBI Special Agent and Profiler Greg Cooper. It's a great read, but I want to talk about my favorite books, which are Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult, and She Knew No Fear. Now, Deceived chronicles my investigation into and the ultimate takedown of a ritual cult that was sexually abusing children. You know, there were more than 4,000 rapes of those children that occurred in a case that resulted in 12 people being convicted of child sex crimes. I wrote the book after some of the victims reached out to me 30 years later, asking me to tell their story. I want you to know I'm not profiting from the book, and the proceeds are going toward building a new children's advocacy center, which you see pictured here. It is a place where children can be forensically and physically examined and prepared for the court system. The center is set to break ground in November of this year, and I really hope you'll buy my book because the proceeds are going directly to help build that building. Now, you can help by purchasing Deceived. The other book I want to talk about, though, is She Knew No Fear. It's the story of the murder of my great-great-grandmother. And the murder occurred on July 24th, 1891. Now, that's statehood day for Utah. I had heard about Jane from my grandfather all of my life, and as my law enforcement career was coming to an end, I thought to myself, wait a minute. I've spent an entire career investigating and solving cold cases. I wondered why I hadn't solved my very own relative's murder. And 130 years after she was shot to death, I solved the crime. I think you'd really enjoy the story, and it would give you an opportunity to get a great Christmas gift for yourself or a loved one. Now, I've priced this book at $30 for a signed hardbound copy of Jane, and you can get it by emailing me directly at profilingevil@gmail.com. And then I'll respond with some shipping and payment information. And we can also find out what you want the book to say in my personal inscription to you. But now, let's get back to today's video. And now, just 2 days ago, the trial began. Jury's been selected, and we now have the opening arguments by the two sides. So let's take a moment and listen to the prosecution and then the defense and their opening statements.
The defendant will please rise. To the allegations as read by state in paragraph 1 of the indictment, how do you plead? To the allegations as read by the state to paragraph 2 of the indictment, how do you plead? You may be seated. Does the state have an opening statement to make at this time? Yes, ma'am. You may proceed.
Thank you, jury. This case is about Anna Moriah Wilson. Everybody calls her Mo Wilson. Mo was an accomplished college skier from Vermont. A few years ago, she got into a sport called gravel racing. And in about 3 short years, she became one of the best in the world at it. On May 11th, 2022, at 9:15 p.m. here in Austin, Texas, the last thing Mo did on this earth was scream in terror. And you hear those screams. There's a surveillance camera with an audio portion to it. We'll play that for you. And you'll hear those screams. Those screams are followed by 2 gunshots. One to the front of the head, one to the side of the head that hits the index finger as it passes. You won't hear any more screams out there. There'll be silence. 45 seconds. And we intend to prove to you, you witness the next year, that after that 4 or 5 seconds silence, Kaitlin Armstrong stood over Mo Wilson and put a 3rd shot right in Mo Wilson's heart. 9:15 p.m. Good morning. My name is Rick Jones. I represent the state of Texas. Along with my co-counsel, Mr. Gonzalez, Ms. Stewart, Ms. Jenny Sullivan, Mr. Rob Drummond, who will join us at some point, we intend to present to you approximately 40 witnesses from this witness chair to give you evidence over the next 4 to 5 days. We're going to start by giving you information about 3 key players. Number 1 will be Mo Wilson. 25 years old, college grad from Vermont, up and coming pro gravel racer. Second key player, Colin Strickland, who's a professional gravel racer who lives right here in Austin, Texas. the third player is Kaitlin Armstrong, the defendant, who lived with Colin. They had an on again, off again romantic relationship. And it was business partners. They had a business of real estate business and refurbishing trades. Through these witnesses, we're going to give you background on Colin and Kaitlin's relationship. They met in October of 2019 and began a romantic relationship in October 2019. You heard from Colin that at some point in 2021, around the freeze, she moved in with Colin. You hear that as a result of that business, they shared an iPad and a laptop that was connected to Colin's phone. So his iMessages from his phone was available on those documents, on those two apparatus. And you'll hear from Colin that the relationship was on again, off again, and you will hear that when the relationship was off, they both dated other people, but they continued to live together. And then we'll give you some more background on Colin. During one of the off again periods in October of 2021, Colin began dating a romantic relationship with Moriah Wilson. While he was taking to live together. Colin's going to tell you that he had to confront Kaitlin Armstrong, communicating, calling Moriah Wilson on her cell phone. And you'll even see cell phone data. Colin is going back and forth with Kaitlin about calling Moriah Wilson. And he sends her a text that says, WTF, with regard to her calling Moriah Wilson. And you'll hear Colin tell you that he changed Mo Wilson's name to Christine Walls in his cell phone in an attempt to secret his communication with Mo Wilson. Because he'll tell you that after they dated, they remained friends. And you'll hear background on Kaitlin Armstrong as well. One of the things you'll hear is she was not happy with this relationship Colin still communicated with Mo Wilson after their romantic relationship ended. You'll hear testimony from this from some of Kaitlin Armstrong's friends. And you'll hear that not only did she share that iPad and laptop with Colin, but she had access to his text messages, through iMessages on those documents. He'll tell you that he was a hands-on kind of guy in his business, and Kaitlin was the business manager type. So, in fact, you'll hear that she sent emails, messages out for the business from those two documents, from those two apparatus that had access to his emails, pretending to be him for the business. That'll prove her access to those documents and access to his text messages through that iMessage on that iPad and that laptop. And you'll see text messages, you'll see cell phone evidence of that phone call that Kaitlin made to Mo Wilson in October 2021. And prior to May 11th, one of the things you'll find out about Kaitlin Armstrong, the defendant, is that Colin at McBride's Guns on Lamar bought two guns. He bought himself a gun, and he bought Kaitlin a 9mm 6-hour P365. And you'll find that in January of 2022, 4 months with his murder, Kaitlin Armstrong goes to the range, a gun range in South Austin, 35 in slaughter. She buys 50 rounds of ammo. You'll see the receipt from the ammo. And you'll see pictures on her cell phone of her practicing with that weapon. That 6-hour P365 9mm. 4 months before Mo Wilson was killed. And then we'll give you some more background before the murder that around the May 2nd, 2022 time frame, Colin Strickland left Austin in late April, and he was gone for about 30 days. He was in California. There was a bike gravel race in San Diego area. Colin will testify that during that late April, early May 2nd deadline, that his communication with Mo began to ramp up. Otherwise, they started to communicate a little bit more than they had in the past. And during this time period, when Colin's out on the road in California, texting Mo more, you would learn from this witness chair that Kaitlin Armstrong is back home in Austin near that laptop and that iPad that has access through iMessages to his information. Now, some very important things happened on May 2nd. A couple of things. On May 2nd, and you'll learn some cell data information, cell phone records. Kaitlin Armstrong logged in to Colin Strickland's Gmail account and Instagram from her phone. So she had access to his information. And another important thing happened on May 2nd. Kaitlin Armstrong, on her phone, you'll get the record, looked up Mo Wilson on her phone. And she looked up pictures of Mo Wilson on her phone on May 2nd, 9 days before Mo was killed. And you'll learn that Colin leaves California and goes to Arizona, to Tucson, I believe. And that Kaitlin decides to fly to Arizona after looking up Mo on May 2nd. She gets to Arizona, and her and Colin drive back. They arrived back in Austin on May 9th. Colin and Kaitlin from Arizona, they drive back, make stops along the way. They arrive back on May 9th. And one of the things that Kaitlin Armstrong does on May 9th, that 2 days before Mo Wilson is killed, she looks her up on an app called Strava. Strava app is an app that allows you to look at a person's activity. Now, you learn from the Strava people that the Strava app has a safety feature. You can put the safety feature on. When you're leaving home, you can post your ride through the mountains. But put the safety feature on, it starts a few blocks from your home. But if you don't put the safety feature on, it gives a pretty close general location of where you begin your ride and where you end your ride. And you'll learn from the testimony from the witness chair that when Mo Wilson was in Austin, she did not activate her safety feature. She posted the ride. You can see where it began and began. Now on May 9th, she's looking up her on Strava. She was Googling her on the 2nd. Now, Mo's not here yet, because on May 10th, the very next day, she's looking up, Mo shows up in Austin for a gravel locos race in Hyco, Texas. It's a 157-mile race that she was favored to win. She didn't stay in a hotel. She stayed with a friend, Kaitlin Cash. We call her Cash. Cash stayed in a garage apartment at 1708B Maple Drive. 1708, she stayed in B behind the house. It's in East Austin, right off of MLK. That's where she stayed. She arrived on the 10th. Now, we'll give you some background about what Kaitlin was doing on the 10th. Now, she looked up on the map, and on the 10th, May 10th, the day that Mo Wilson arrived in Austin, you'll hear testimony that Kaitlin Armstrong looked up Mo on Strava 4 different times. This is the day before Mo was killed. 4 times. And Strava pretty much tells where you are. And we're going to go to May 11th. The day Mo Wilson was murdered. Now, during that day, Colin and Mo began to text each other. And you'll see those text messages. We're trying to hook up together. We go back and forth about what time, where we're going to go, and things like that. You'll see those text messages. And Colin will tell you that later on that day, 3 o'clock range, he leaves on his motorcycle to go to the dentist. And while he's out at the dentist visit, him and Mo finalized their plans to hook up for the DVD and go to a DVD to prove it. And he will testify that texting was on his iPhone. It was connected through our messages to that iPad and laptop back at home, and you'll get cell data records to show that Kaitlin Armstrong was back at home at this time. Now, we're going to tell you what Mo Wilson was doing the last day of her life. Before she went swimming, one of the last things she did, she loved to do. She went on a 3-mile bike ride from 123, and she arrived back at 423. We know that because she posted it on Strava, and we know that because you'll also be presenting evidence that her cell phone data, which has locations, follows her and shows where she starts and where she goes, her whole route, and what she gets back to. You'll get that evidence from this witness here. And at 4:49 p.m., May 11th, she texts Colin. Give me the exact address of where she is. 1708. This is what I'm going to need for the pickup. And you'll get testimony from this witness chair that at 4:49 p.m., Mo sends that text to Colin. Kaitlin Armstrong is back home with that iPad and that laptop. Now, we're going to talk about Kaitlin Armstrong around the time when the text was sent. At 4:49 p.m., a text message was sent with the exact location of where Mo Wilson would be on May 11, 2022. The exact location when she texted her dad. 730 Maple Drive. Kaitlin is back home with the laptop. And at 4:54 p.m., 5 minutes testimony that 5 minutes after that text went to Colin, Kaitlin Armstrong looks up Moriah Wilson on the shot. Looks at that ride from 123 to 423. And you see that. You see Kaitlin Armstrong silver. Now she had access to information at that time. Then we're going to move you along in the evening of May 11th. At 5:43 p.m., Colin picks up Mo at Kaitlin Cash's apartment. They go to the Deep Eddy Pool, and there's a restaurant called Pool Burger across the street. Now, you'll see a couple of things that put them there. You'll see Colin and Mo's cell phone traveling from Cash's house to Pool Burger in Deep Eddy. And you'll see video of them sitting in the restaurant eating around the 8 o'clock area. And you'll even see a video of them leaving on a motorcycle to left 8 o'clock on May 11th from the Pool Burger area. Now, Colin drops Mo off at 8:35 p.m. You'll hear witnesses talk about his cell phone. Gets him right there in that alley. It's an alley behind the main house. Down the street, an alley. 8:35, he drops her off. And Colin goes home. And he's home at 9:15 when those gunshots go off. And we know he's home because you'll be able to hear witnesses track him on his cell phone. He does stop at 8:38 on MLK, a few blocks from dropping Mo off, and he texts Kaitlin about that area he was running. He said, finished. Want to get something to eat? She doesn't respond. A few later, learn that she doesn't respond to her cell phone. When he goes home, he receives a phone call about 9 o'clock. You'll hear from the person who called him. They was on the phone for 8 minutes. You see cell phone records proving it. And then at 9:21, Colin sends Kaitlin one last text message. Finished? Where you at? Want to get something to eat? I'm going home. And cell phone location puts Colin at his home miles away from 1708 Maple Drive. That's how we know where he is. Now let's talk about Mo Wilson on May 11th. Mo comes home. Remember, Colin dropped her off at 8:35. Little small flight of stairs up Cash's garage apartment. At 8:36, Mo unlocks the door to Cash's apartment. And we know that because Cash has an app on her phone that sends her a message when the door is locked and unlocked. Not open and closed, just locked and unlocked. Cash was at dinner. She left her apartment before Mo going to dinner with friends as well. You'll hear that from Cash. So, she unlocks the door at 8:36. She goes in her apartment. And you will hear from cell data experts and cell phone records that from 8:37 p.m., almost a minute after the door opens, she's on her phone. be able to track her phone, look at her phone. She's on her phone, calling at 8:37, 1 minute later, on her phone. And she stays on her phone until 9:13. Consequently, you will also learn that within 4 or 5 feet of those stairs, there's a fence and a driveway. You will learn that at 8:37 p.m., 1 minute after she opened that door, Kaitlin Armstrong's Jeep is seen going through that alley. 1 minute. Time she opens that door, 1 minute later, you see that Jeep going through the alley. And you'll see that on video surveillance camera. 1 minute. 8:36, 8:37, 8:38, probably a few blocks away, texting. You hear all that from witnesses. Now, Mo sends her last message out at 9:13 p.m. She sent a text message to a podcaster. 2 minutes before that time. Her last message to a podcaster. Now, you heard from Kaitlin Cash. She had gone to dinner. Good friend of mine, Mo was hanging. She arrives home and sees Mo on the floor. Just sees her legs. She'll testify. She thought Mo had been on a strenuous ride and was laying on the floor, stretching, relaxing. And she'll testify that she gets closer and sees blood and freaks out. And at 9:54 p.m., within seconds of being in her apartment, she calls 911. And she'll tell you that she put the phone on speaker, and the 911 operator had her doing chest compressions to her friend. She'll tell you she had no idea she was dead, whether she was dead or not. You hear testimony of she pressed her closest friend's chest about 80 times for 8 to 10 minutes until the first responders showed up and took over. The police talked to her that night, and she tells them that she left before Mo. She tells them who Mo is. They don't know who she is. She's a friend of mine. She's from San Francisco. She's here visiting. I don't know. She was supposed to have dinner with a friend named Colin Strickland. And she even shows him a text message where Mo texted her and said, hey, what are you coming? Beginning with the police investigation. Now, the police continue to investigate. They canvassed the area for surveillance, videos, and they locate a black Jeep with a very distinct bicycle rack with 3 racks on it at 8:37 p.m. in an alley about 5 feet from Cash's stairs. It's a little fence that separates them. 8:37. It's the Jeep I was just telling you about. Passing that alley. 1 minute after she opened that door. We're gonna present evidence to you. That's Kaitlin Armstrong's Jeep. Police bring in Colin Strickland the next day on May 12th. And the investigation is done. It's on the way. The police interviewed Colin, confirms his story. He tells them all the things you're going to hear about. I picked her up. I was on a motorcycle. Deep Eddie, Pool Burger, they canvass and get video to prove that stuff eventually. Now, the police also sent somebody to Colin's house for an investigation. To sit on the house and watch that house while they were interviewing Colin, his main police officer. Once the detective learned about that black Jeep in the alley, he asked Colin about that black Jeep. Colin would testify, he told him, that's her Jeep. She owned it, she drives it. I'm not saying I've never driven it, okay, but I wasn't driving it that day. I was on my motorcycle. So now, Kaitlin Armstrong becomes the person interested as well. Is they're concerned about why that Jeep was at 1708 make at 8:37 p.m. Now, the police go to get Kaitlin Armstrong. They look her up. They find that she got some Class B warrant. They pick her up and they bring her in. And you'll see, well, you heard from Detective Connor, who has her in the room talking to her. And apparently, Detective Connor would tell her, yeah, that's some kind of mistake with this woman. The birthday's mixed up or something. Not sure it's you. We're going to release you. You can go. You're free to go. At the same time, the police have got a search warrant to search the house. Now, you'll see that when Kaitlin is in that room with Detective Connor, she says, I want to leave. But she doesn't get up to leave. You'll see the video. She continues to stay there. Detective Connor continues to tell her more about it and ask her questions. I just want to hear your side of the story, and you tell me why your Jeep is at the scene of this murder. Doesn't say anything. Does say something like, I didn't know how to do that. Same girl she's been searching on May 2nd, May 9th, May 10th. And eventually, they do release her from the police station that day. There is no explanation why the Jeep was there. Now, from that search warrant at Colin and Kaitlin's home, they find two things that are very important to this case. Two guns. One, Smith, it's Colin's gun. They find a 9mm 6-hour P365 that belongs to Kaitlin Armstrong. That gun is later identified through ballistics as a firearm that was used to kill Moriah Wilson. Now, the day after this interview, May 13th, some important things happen. You'll see Kaitlin Armstrong on a video camera at CarMax in South Austin, near their home. She goes to CarMax and she sells her Jeep for $12,000. You'll see a video of her in CarMax. On that same day, you'll see an Uber receipt. She rides an Uber to Austin Bergstrom Airport after she sold her car. And you'll also be presented evidence. Sent to Walmart. Also prepaid visa. The next day, she rode to Uber to airport on the 13th, but the next day on May 14th, she flies from Austin to Houston and from Houston to New York City. You'll see the flight receipts. And you'll learn that on May 18th, a few days later, and you'll also learn that she has a sister, Kaitlin Armstrong, that lived in New York, New Jersey. On May 18th, you'll be presented testimony of her going online, using her credit card, her email, buying a plane ticket to Costa Rica with her sister's name listed as the passenger on May 18th. And on that same day, she flies to Costa Rica using her sister Kaitlin Armstrong's passport. She goes to Costa Rica and assumes a different identity. And on June 22nd, while in Costa Rica, she has plastic surgery. You'll see the medical records from Dr. Badia. She spends $6,425 to change her appearance. You'll also see before and after photos in those medical records. That's on June 22nd. A few days later, on June 29th, the U.S. Marshals locate Kaitlin Armstrong in Costa Rica. Have no jurisdiction, notify the local authorities. Get together, they work it out. And a few days after June 29th, Kaitlin Armstrong is returned to the United States. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit and tell you a little about the cell phone data. Cell phone data can include calls, text messages, and also location information. It can tell who you call, who you text, and where you are. Let's talk about Colin's cell phone data. You can see those text messages I told you about between them two. You'll see him traveling on a cell phone location to pick her up. You'll see him traveling to Bloomberg. Okay? You'll see him traveling from Poolberg. You'll see him leaving the scene at 8:35, dropping her off, and you'll see him stop and make that text message at 8:38 through the cell phone records. You'll see that 9 o'clock phone call, last 8 minutes, and you'll see that 9:21 text, and you'll be able to see from the cell phone expert that he's way at home at 9:15 when those shots ring out. You'll be able to tell it from the cell data. So we look at Mo Wilson's cell data. You'll be able to see that ride she took, the last ride of her life. At 1:23, 4:23 p.m. on 9/11. Hopefully not. You get to see the cell phone. You see it. You'll be able to see and read that text message. 4:49 p.m. on 9/11. 17 on that. Cell database. And you'll see her location to help you verify what time she got home. You got Cash's information saying the door's open 8:36. You'll be able to look at the cell data to see if it also says she got home at 8:36. You'll be able to see that to verify. You'll also see that from 8:37 to 9:13, she was on her phone in an apartment. And you'll even see evidence afterwards that that's the front door, here's a couch. after she's murdered, you'll see that cell phone on that couch plugged into a white charger right there, right by the door. You hear this very small apartment. She was a few feet away to the bathroom. But at 9:13, that cell phone is right there when she sent that last message, right by that front door. And you'll see that last text that she sent to the podcast. 2 minutes before she killed. You'll see Kaitlin Armstrong cell data. These cell phone people tell you they can get your stuff from your cell phone, unlock your cell phone through the cloud, all kind of ways. You will see her cell phone and a GPS that I'm going to tell you about is in her Jeep. You will see them traveling earlier that day, side by side, so you can verify the accuracy of it. And you'll also see from the cell phone people that at 7:30 p.m., 7:30 p.m. on May 11th, turn the cell phone on. Turn it off. By the way, on June 29th, the U.S. Marshals gathered in Costa Rica. This is right the cell phone on the phone. That's what cell phone evidence can tell you. And also, you'll see that at 9:55, approximately 35 minutes or so, after you hear that scream on that audio and the ring camera, her cell phone is turned back on. And it's at her house in South Austin. And you'll see location data for that cell phone. And you'll learn that on May 27th, while in Costa Rica, she searched her name from her cell phone, news articles, things about her arrest, things about her being a fugitive. You'll see that through the cell phone data, people. She's looking at all this and reading this stuff, and putting it up on her phone while she's in Costa Rica on May 27th. After the murder, but before the plastic surgery, you see her Googling this warrants for her arrest and stuff in Costa Rica. Now, I told you the police was canvassing the video surveillance. You'll see one video surveillance camera of Colin leaving that motorcycle at 8:36 once he dropped Mo off at Cass's apartment. We got him one time on video camera. Now, there's 4 video surveillance cameras that captures Kaitlin Armstrong circling Cass's house at 1708 Maple for about an hour before the murder. It's circling. One camera catches it 3 or 4 times. He's passing up down the street on that black Jeep that she sold at CarMax. Now, one of them videos that catches her in the front of the house, in the back of the house, they have cameras on both sides, front and back of the house. That's the camera that catches her along that fence at 36. 1 minute after. No. On May 11th. Now, you will find that many cars, and this Jeep here had an infotainment center. And within that infotainment center, there's GPS. You hear that Kaitlin Armstrong Jeep had an infotainment center with a GPS system in it. GPS shows time and location data. You'll see an animation of her driving down Lamar with the dots. Starting about 6 p.m. It's tracking her all over the city, North Austin, driving around. You'll see her circling the block around the house. And you'll see the experts look at the video ring time and the GPS on the Jeep time to verify the accuracy. For example, the GPS says she's on this street, the ring time takes a picture. You see that side by side. Now, GPS have what they call trip logs. Everybody has trip logs. Trip log cuts off, Jeep is on. The car is on. You hear about trip log 99, trip log 100. Trip log 99 stops at 8:40 p.m. GPS location puts Kaitlin Armstrong Jeep in an alley about 15, 20 yards from those stairs that Mo Wilson went up at 8:30, GPS guy will testify that at 9:17 p.m., 2 minutes after those fatal shots, trip log 100 starts. That Jeep starts up and starts to move. 2 minutes later, just 15 or 20 yards from the stairs where the Jeep is parked. It's parked up at 8:40, no activity, turned off. 2 minutes up the road, that Jeep is back home and it's gone. And one of the things about this Jeep is we follow this Jeep on GPS all the way to the home in South Austin. You see that it stops by an apartment complex into a dumpster. On the way home, stops by the dumpster for a minute. The GPS shows that the car is moving when it stops, miles per hour, so how fast it's going, it's not moving at all. When you see her go up to that dumpster, by the apartment complex, stop for a few minutes, then you're going to see her drive off home, cut that Jeep off, and trip log 100 is going to end. Right around 9:55 p.m., same time, that phone popped back on at her home. Now, you're going to hear from a ballistics and tool mark expert. There were 3 shell casings and 3 projectiles recovered at the scene. One of the projectiles was too mangled to compare. So he had 3 shell casings, 2 projectiles to use for comparison. So they got those 2 guns that they got from the search warrant. Colin's gun and Kaitlin's 6-hour P365 9mm. They test fired those guns and compared those test fires casings to those 5 found at the scene. From that chair, the ballistics guy is going to tell you Colin's gun was excluded. Kaitlin's gun were identified. The results will show that those casings, test casings, were identified as being the same as fired from that gun. That's what he's going to testify. That 6-hour P365 9mm, the same gun fired those casings at 1708 Maple Drive. And you're also going to hear from DNA expert. Now, you hear that they swab DNA from Mo Wilson's bike, which they found in some weeds, maybe 10 yards from the bottom of those stairs, cut 4 or 5 yards from where that car was parked at 840, and some bamboo weeds. They found her bike. You will find that the bike weighs about 5 or 6 pounds. You can pick it up like with one hand. You'll find that it's a very expensive bike, thousands of dollars. And you remember that earlier, she was riding the bike. It was wonderful. Now, the DNA expert will tell you that she took DNA from Mo Wilson, Kaitlin Armstrong, and Colin Strickland to compare to the DNA on that bike. Now, they found DNA on the handlebars. Now, the DNA expert will tell you that they don't say that's the person. They got likelihood ratios. Uninformative, 5 categories. Uninformative with the lowest, strong, and very strong likelihood. That's how they give it down. You will find, or she'll testify, that the DNA on the handlebars was a very strong likelihood that the DNA on the handlebars included DNA from Kaitlin Armstrong. Strong. And the DNA expert will testify that with regards to the DNA on the seat of the bike, that there's a very strong likelihood that the DNA on the seat of the bike included DNA from Kaitlin Armstrong. Very strong, highest category they had. And on October 11th, 2023, 19 days before this trial began, you're going to hear testimony that Kaitlin Armstrong escaped from the Travis County Jail. And was apprehended about a mile down the road. 19 days before this trial. When we present this evidence to you through these 40 witnesses here, we're going to ask you to find Kaitlin Armstrong guilty of murdering Mo Wilson. Thank you so much for your time.
So why are we here? Why are we here? You heard the state get up and tell you this is an open and shut case, right? There's DNA, ballistics, GPS evidence. The state's certainly convinced. That's all very important. So why are we here? You may already have your mind made up. I know Detective Richard Spittler with the Austin Police Department certainly did, just hours into his investigation. So why are we here? We are here because the state's opinion of what the evidence is and the Austin Police Department's opinion of what the evidence isn't important. You are the most important people in this room. It is your opinion of the evidence that we are here for. That's why we're here. Reasonable doubt. I want to talk to you about reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt is doubt that is supported by...
Jeff, he's making an argument about the weight of the evidence. He's not giving a roadmap.
Provide an opening statement what the evidence would show. With no statements to that.
I plan to, Your Honor. Reasonable doubt is doubt that is supported by reason and common sense. And I expect at the end of this trial that we will be talking about doubt, what that is. But for purposes of my remarks to you this morning, I want to talk to you about reason and common sense. Now, reason...
Because once again, that's not a roadmap for evidence. That's argument.
Judges sustained.
Judgment of approach?
Yes.
Now, the state just discussed with you what you will see, what you will hear about, what you will hear throughout the course of this trial. But I want to talk to you about what you didn't hear about. What you didn't hear about. You didn't hear that not one witness saw Kaitlin Armstrong allegedly commit this murder. Not one, because there isn't one. You didn't hear.
I'm not objecting again. He's supposed to be presenting the evidence over that he's going to show, not evidence that he's not going to show. Once again, this is argument.
If the information from the argument is that the evidence that you open the statement that you stated in open statement states one thing, and he's pointing out what that evidence does not show, that would be permissible. But we would limit it to that and not argument as to the facts of the case or why it was not amount to the burden of proof that we created in this instance.
Thank you, Your Honor. You won't hear, and you didn't hear, about any camera footage showing Kaitlin Armstrong at the scene of this shooting. Despite there being tons of cameras in the area, and you heard opening statements about all the cameras that were in the immediate vicinity of the scene of that shooting, not one captures Kaitlin Armstrong at that scene, because there isn't any. You did not hear about any direct evidence showing Kaitlin Armstrong is responsible for this crime, because there isn't any. Now, you will hear at the time Kaitlin left Austin to go to New York and then to Costa Rica, she would have no reason to know about any warrant that was present in this case. That the Austin Police Department told her she was free to go. She was free to go. That's what you will hear. You will hear that Kate is passionate about traveling. She's passionate about yoga. And you're going to hear that she was totally comfortable traveling to far-off locations that intrigued her at the drop of a hat, on a moment's notice. That's what you'll hear. And you'll hear in the days following the shooting, weird things were happening to Kate at her home. Documented things. Things that would cause a reasonable person to fear for their safety. And that ultimately led to her decision to leave Austin. And you're going to hear people among us who are weak to begin with, who are troubled to begin with, who are damaged to begin with, are more likely to fall into that kind of state of reaction, an attempt to retreat. So let's talk about some of the witnesses that you may hear about over the course of this trial. Detective Richard Spidler. Now, he's the detective who, prior to the investigation of this case, had never served as a lead detective in a murder investigation. Not one. But I'm sure he did very well on his exams. You're also going to hear from Detective Katie Conn. Now, she's the detective that will tell you she's never met a defendant she couldn't crack in an interrogation, even if they invoke their rights multiple times throughout the conversation. Ask for their lawyer multiple times throughout the conversation. Ask to leave multiple times throughout the conversation. Now, the state is going to attempt to tie Miss Armstrong to this shooting through purported forensic science. And you'll hear from the DNA analysts that examined some items that were collected in this case. And you will hear from a ballistic technician who will tell you he eyeballed some shell casings that were submitted in this case and determined that they were not inconsistent with a firearm that was taken from the home of Kate and Colin. But you will also hear from experts. And I want you to listen when those experts tell you DNA reporting can mean very little. And ballistic science isn't a science at all. And it's not highly regarded by members of the general scientific community.
I'm going to object to that. There's no evidence that it's not highly regarded by the general science community just because you can find one or two people to say that.
Judge, these are opening remarks. This is what we expect the evidence to show. This is proper argument. Thank you. Before that objection was overruled, we were talking about ballistic science and how that is far from the gold standard that you see it depicted as on TV. Now, the states and the officers with the Austin Police Department and the scientists that they employ, they were so desperate to keep Kaitlin Armstrong in their crosshairs that they had tunnel vision and jumped to conclusions. And at the end of this evidence, you will be left with the conclusion that the state's purported forensic science is inaccurate, is unreliable, and unscientific. Now, words and phrases have the meaning that we give them. Words and phrases are meaningless unless jurors like you draw a hard line in the sand. Phrases like presumption of innocence.
Judge, once again, he's making an argument.
Proof beyond any reasonable doubt.
Judge, once again, he's making an argument.
Judge, this is the burden of proof. If the state is apprehensive about the jury hearing about...
I'm apprehensive about him not giving a roadmap and giving an argument at open statement. That's what I'm apprehensive about.
You said 4 words. I don't know where you're going from there, so I'll allow you to finish your sentence to see if it is part of the open statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate it. You must approach the task of your evaluation of the evidence with the willingness to think that which I know as a father, as a person, as a human, know to be the most difficult words to say. I don't know. I don't know. And I want you to approach that task.
Judge, once again, he's talking about how the jury weighs evidence. He's not talking about the foundation of what he's laying, what he expects to prove.
Judge, this is appropriate argument. Your Honor?
This is opening statement.
I didn't hear the first room.
I just said this is opening statement. I haven't made a ruling, but I would ask again that you could find your remarks to the appropriate statements for this juncture of the trial.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't know. At the end of the evidence, that is your conclusion. We don't know. The appropriate verdict is not guilty. And as you approach that jury room, if that is your conclusion, we don't know, not for sure, then the appropriate verdict is not guilty. The state has a job to do. We have a job to do. And you stand between us. And we stand...
Judge, that's not opening statement.
Objection sustained.
With Kaitlin Armstrong, a woman who is trapped in a nightmare of circumstantial evidence.
That's not opening statement.
Judge,
That's
I'm
argument.
discussing the evidence. And that
You're
it is
discussing her
circumstantial.
state of mind. That's not evidence.
The statement is sustained.
Okay. We have an awesome responsibility. Yours is more awesome. And at the end of the evidence, you will be left with the conclusion that the state has fallen short of the incredibly high burden that they have willingly accepted in choosing to accuse this woman of a very serious crime. You had your chance. You could have been excused on Monday.
Judge, that's not opening statement.
Objection sustained.
But you told us you'd be fair.
That's the same line of question. It's not opening statement.
Are we concluding this case?
I'm trying to wrap it up, Your Honor.
And you're not doing opening statement.
Let's wrap it up appropriately as far as what the evidence from your portion of the trial or what you intend to show or think will be shown to the jury?
I'm trying to get there, Your Honor, despite
Without
interruptions.
argument. Let's do it
Yes.
without argument.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Your Honor. At the end of this case, your responsibility is more awesome. And you will have the conclusion that the state has fallen short of its burden.
Judge, once again, every time you stand, he gets up and says the same thing. He's making arguments about how they weigh the evidence at the end of the trial.
Judge.
That's not open statement.
It is the burden of proof, Your Honor, that the jury has in this case. If the state's apprehensive about the burden of proof that they've accepted,
There's a time and place to talk about the burden of proof, and it's not open statement.
Let me stop both. If there are no further statements about what the evidence is going to show, then we can move on to the next portion of the trial. So we've heard that statement that you've made a few times now, so I would ask you if there's nothing else about the evidence.
there is, Your Honor.
Okay.
We trusted you then. And we trust that at the conclusion of this trial, when you look at the evidence, you will come to a just verdict. And that just verdict, we trust, will be a verdict of not guilty.
Well, I hope you'll be watching this one with me, folks. I mean, I spent today on True Crime Daily with Anna Garcia. In fact, we were celebrating her 5 millionth subscriber today. I hope you'll listen in. That'll be released on Friday, but we were talking about this case, and I'll undoubtedly be on Court TV talking about it as the days unfold. But now that we've watched this prosecution and defense statements, I want you to take a moment and share what your thoughts are on this case. Do you think this prosecutor's aggressiveness is going to pay off or backfire on him? Would a jury like this, or would they be offended by it? And certainly, will the judge put up with it? Pay really close attention to how exercised that prosecutor was during those opening arguments. And this is just day one. So put your thoughts down below. I hope you'll weigh in on that one, and I hope you'll be kind to each other as you read each other and comment on each other's comments. Please, folks, take a moment and look for us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course here on YouTube. And please like us and share us with your friends. And make sure you're subscribing if you haven't already done so. Thanks for your support of Profiling Evil. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.